Okay, so French castles. Anyone else immediately think of the Loire Valley?
Yeah, I mean, those fairy tale-esque chateaux, hard to beat.
But, for this deep dive, we're going off the beaten path a bit.
Oh, where are we headed?
Burgundy.
Burgundy. Okay, interesting. I'm intrigued.
We've got this article from Love to Visit France.
Hmm.
It's called Châteaux in Burgundy.
Mm.
You absolutely must visit. And yeah, it's basically going to be our guide to these hidden gems,
Hmm.
rolling vineyards, those charming villages.
And castles. Don't forget the castles.
Of course, steeped in history. It's like a whole different vibe from the Loire, right?
Totally. The Loire is all grand, whimsical. Burgundy's got a different kind of charm.
Understated. More grounded, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And get this, the article says there are like 100 chateaux scattered all over the region.
100. Seriously, I had no clue. Can you imagine all that history just like woven into those walls?
It's mind-boggling, right?
Totally. So does the article give us any specific examples of these Burgundy castles?
It does. There's one, the Cormatin Castle in South Burgundy. It's described as a moated castle.
A moat. Oh, come on. That's classic.
Wow.
Like straight out of a storybook.
Right. So picturesque.
What's the history there? Do we know anything about Cormatin?
The article doesn't really go into details, sadly. It just says it's a must visit. So that definitely piques your curiosity.
It really does. It makes you wonder, what happened there? Was it like a defensive stronghold? Did royalty live there? What went down in those courtyards? It's like a puzzle just waiting to be solved.
Absolutely. That's what's so cool about these historic places, right? They give us a glimpse into the past, make us think about the people who were there before us.
Totally. Okay, so the article also mentions something about Christmas at Châteaux near Paris. Sounds magical, right?
Oh, for sure. Those grand castles all decked out for the holidays.
I can practically smell the pine and cinnamon. Maybe we should do a deep dive on that sometime.
A December special, perhaps? But for now, let's stick with Burgundy and its chateau.
Right, right. So what stands out to you about this region?
I think it's the whole package. History, the natural beauty.
It's different from what we usually picture with French castles.
Yeah, it's less fairy tale, more about the history etched into the landscape. Those vineyards, rolling hills, castles dotting the countryside.
It all feels so, steeped in tradition.
Exactly, like you're stepping back in time.
A slower pace of life. And those castles, they've seen it all.
Silent witnesses. Oh, and speaking of other regions, the article also mentioned Auvergne being a key spot for wine and beer.
Auvergne, right. Though I guess that's not directly related to our Burgundy castles.
Not directly, no, but I am curious about that link between like wine and beer and how a region comes back to life.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those local products become such a big part of a place's identity.
Definitely. They tell a story.
A story about the land, the people, the traditions.
Right. Okay, back to those Burgundy castles. Any other specific ones that caught your eye in the article?
Besides Cormatin, let me think. Oh, there was the Chateau de Val in Cantal, France.
Oh, right. But they didn't really say much about it, did they? Just a quick mention in that from social media section.
Another one for the must-see list, then.
It's amazing how many treasures France has hidden away.
Even with the limited details, the article really makes you want to dig deeper.
It sparks that curiosity. That's what a good deep dive does, right? Makes you want to explore.
And who knows what else we might find.
Exactly. Yeah, those little mysteries, they really pull you in, like following a trail of breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs, huh? Speaking of, remember that extra section at the end? It mentioned the 12 most amazing chateaux in France.
Oh, yeah. Talk about tempting distractions.
Maybe it's a sign we need to do a whole French castles series.
I wouldn't say no to that. But before we go too far off track, maybe we should circle back to that Cormatin castle, with the moat and all.
Oh, right. We got so caught up in the image, we didn't even talk about, why they even had moats.
Exactly. They weren't just for looks. Those moats were serious defense, especially in Burgundy. Lots of conflict, power struggles, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. A moat could really make a difference if you were under siege.
Big time. So yeah, when we picture Cormatin, it's not just a pretty picture. It's a reminder of how strategic that location was.
Right. Did anyone ever try to cross it? Were there secret tunnels underneath?
So many questions.
Now you're making me want to go full-on historian mode.
Yeah.
Digging through archives, looking for clues.
Me too. It's amazing how one little detail, like a moat, can spark so much curiosity.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just dry facts. It's full of stories, mysteries.
Oh, and speaking of stories, we were talking about Christmas at the Châteaux earlier. Even though it's not Burgundy, it still has that same magical vibe.
Totally. Can you imagine those huge halls all decorated, fireplaces roaring, Christmas trees, and that sense of history mixed with the holiday spirit? It's just
Makes you want to grab a book about French castles, curl up by the fire.
with a cup of hot cocoa, of course.
Of course. It's like these castles, they're not just stuck in the past. They still have this power to, like, capture our imaginations. For sure. And you know what else I'm realizing? This whole deep dive, it's kind of changed how I think about French castles.
Oh, so.
I used to be all about the Loire Valley, you know?
Yeah.
Those fairy tale ones. But Burgundy, it's just different.
It's more subtle, maybe.
Yeah. A quiet kind of strength tied to the land and all.
It's like finding a hidden treasure, you know?
Totally. It's why we explore, right? To see things in new ways, to challenge what we think we know.
Exactly. So even though this deep dive